Good morning, and thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be in Hebrews chapter 11, starting with verse 29 to the end of the chapter. In the past week, we've talked about faith and how by faith, men of God were what he called them to be. In the beginning of Hebrews chapter 11, it says, by faith, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith, we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible. God gave us the ability to know that he is God. That by faith, we can trust, we can know, we can believe in that. Even if we don't see it, we can know that it's true. By faith, we can also act. In the verses that follow, he talked about different people from the Old Testament, Abel, Enoch, Abraham, Isaac, all of these men who followed and believed in God and did what God asked them to do by faith. He also pointed out how by faith, even in trials, even when there were tests, that God was faithful and with them, and that they could put their trust and faith in him, even when they were being tested. Today, we're going to talk about how by faith, we are made complete. In the Hebrews chapter 11, starting with verse 29, it says, by faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land. But when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned. You see, by faith, as a whole, the nation was delivered. They approached this Red Sea, and they were trapped between the Egyptians who were approaching them and the Red Sea. God put a cloud between them and opened up the Red Sea, and they walked across on dry land as Moses directed them. By faith, the nation was saved. On the contrast, because they did not have faith, because they did not follow God, the Egyptians were destroyed. In the next verse, in verse 30, it says, by faith, the walls of Jericho fell after the people had marched around them for 7 days. I like this story because it talks about how the underdogs, the Israelites, who have no weapons per se, who are not from this area, they approach this city that is well fortified and has all of the armament that they would need. And all they do is they approach it. And they march around the city for 7 days. And on the seventh day, they shout and they yell, and the walls come tumbling down. That always impressed me because of the fact that as a whole, the nation of Israel followed God and God blessed them. The next verse might seem like a little different, but it says, by faith, the prostitute Rahab, because she welcomed the spies, was not killed with those who were disobedient. So just in the opposite way, those who were destroyed because of their disobedience, Rahab was not destroyed, and her family, because they chose to believe, to put their trust in God, and do what the spies had told them to do when she provided them protection. So each time the nation of Israel surrenders to God and does his will by faith, God blesses them. These stories go on. As a matter of fact, in the next verse it says, and what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets, who through faith conquered kingdoms, administered justice, and gained what was promised, who shut the mouths of lions, quenched the fury of flames, and escaped the edge of the sword, whose weakness was turned to strength, and who became powerful in battle, and routed foreign armies. These examples that he is giving here in just a summary are all of those people who, by faith, put their trust and faith in God. And because they did, the Israelite nation was delivered. They were delivered time and time again because they put their faith and trust in God. And that nation was saved. Some of the highlights of those names that was just mentioned: David, Samuel, Gideon. Just think about some of the stories of their might and how they conquered this nation. But then remember that it wasn't them, but it was God. As God would stand between them and their enemy and defeat the enemy on their behalf. All of the stories that you can think of how God stood in the wake and protected the nation of Israel, oftentimes destroying the enemies because they were not faithful. They did not follow God. Think about this nation. I believe that God blessed this nation. For the past 200 years, we have enjoyed the benefits of putting our trust and faith in God. I know there's those who would like to rewrite history, to say that this nation was not built on God. But I don't believe that to be true. I believe that God blessed this nation because we put our faith and trust in Him. And because we did, I believe God blessed us and provided us the ability to conquer, to live in this land and enjoy the blessings that He has provided for us. There are some who question at this point in time, are we still there? Are we still following God as a nation? Are we still willing to follow and trust and believe by faith that God is in control of all things? This might be a time of testing. This might be a time of suffering. But if we are faithful, if we do what He asks us to do and are truthful, truly faithful to Him, I believe God will bless us. He goes on in verse 35, the women received back their dead, raised to life again. Others were tortured and refused to be released so that they might gain a better resurrection. Some faced jeers and flogging, while still others were chained and put into prison. They were stoned, they were sawed in two, and they were put to death by the sword. They went about in sheepskins and goatskins, destitute, persecuted, and mistreated. The world was not worthy of them. They wandered in deserts and mountains and in caves and in holes in the ground. As I read that, you might have remembered some of the different stories of how Christians were tortured and abused and even killed, thrown in prison, separated from their families. All of these things happened because they believed and trusted in God. That may not sound like a good thing, but when you look at it in the context of what God was wanting to show, is that He is faithful. He is there for us. Then why didn't He save us? Why did He allow the suffering to go on? Because sometimes in suffering, people see that God is who He says He is. Because these people are willing to suffer for Him. They are willing to give their lives for Him. And that gives credence. That helps others to see that there must be something more to this, because these people aren't doing it for the benefits of physical life, by the benefits of riches. It has to be because they believe in something bigger, something greater than what this world has to offer. And that's exactly how he finishes up Hebrews chapter 11. If you look at the next verse, in verse 39, it says, "These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what has been promised. God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect." God's design was that one day He would come back and take all of His people with Him, deliver us, and bring them into a better kingdom as a whole, complete. So those who have gone on before us, some of them did not see even the physical benefits of following God. Some of them died. Some of them gave their lives for what they believed in. But there is still a hope. That hope that in the life to come, in the eternal life, that we will all be united as one. Being perfect, being whole, being complete. The church, the believers, the followers of God are all combined and united as one. To think about that, to think about the day that we will all join together in heaven and enjoy the benefits of being with one another and with God. To sit around and listen to the stories of David, listen to Samson's story, hear the story of Solomon. I can't wait to see those days, to hear about how all of these men put their trust and faith in God. And because they did, they are there in that ending destination, that promise, that fulfillment, that completeness that God has planned for all who believe and trust and put their faith in Him. Look forward to that day. When you look at all these men and women who were faithful and followed God and were blessed because of that, some of them received their blessings in physical ways. Some of them are yet to see the blessings that they will receive. But all of them were truthful. All of them were faithful to God and following Him and doing His will. And because they are, because we are, we have that hope. We have that promise of eternal life. And once again, not as a hope that it might happen, but a hope that we get to enjoy the promise that has been made, because we can fully put our trust and hope in Him, because He is always faithful to do what He has said. So as we look through the chapter of Hebrews 11, we can see that by faith, men and women responded to God's commands. By faith, they were faithful even during testing and trials. By faith, they remained faithful and were praised for their willingness to be followers of God, even under trials, temptations, and persecutions. Through all of these things, God showed that He is faithful, that He was there, He is there today. He wants us to have that same hope of being together with all of these men and women of faith, to join them in the day that's coming, the day when He comes back and takes His people home as a whole, complete, because we put our faith and trust in Him. I look forward to that day, and I hope you do too. If there's something that I can do for you, if there's something I can encourage you in, I ask you to please let me know. And may God have a blessing in store for you today and for the days to come. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us.